Tonight, we're looking back at several R&B legends whose voices once filled radios, dance floors, and late-night drives across America, but whose lives later took darker, more complicated turns. These were artists who shaped the sound of their time. Songs that played at weddings, on slow summer nights, and through the speakers of cars cruising city streets. For many listeners, their music became part of life's soundtrack. But behind the spotlight, some stories moved in directions no one imagined. And the final name on this list may be the one that still leaves the most complicated echo. Let's begin with number 10. Number 10, I Believe I Can Fly by R. Kelly.
I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it.
By the late 1990s, this song seemed to float through every corner of American life. It played during graduations, award shows, and quiet moments when people needed a reminder that hope still existed. Released in 1996, the record arrived during a time when R&B was blending deeply with pop and gospel influences. The singer behind it had already built a reputation as one of the most powerful voices of the decade, writing and producing hits not just for himself, but for many others across the industry. The feeling of the song was unmistakable. The soaring vocals carried a sense of uplift that felt almost spiritual, the kind of music that made listeners sit still for a moment and simply listen. One small detail made the performance unforgettable: the way his voice rose gradually through the chorus, almost like a church choir building toward a final note. For many people, the song became tied to moments of encouragement, times when life felt uncertain, but possibility still felt close. But the years that followed would bring a very different story. Legal troubles and criminal convictions eventually overshadowed the music, leaving listeners to wrestle with the difficult question about how art and the artist can sometimes drift apart. And sometimes, when a record like this comes on the radio today, people pause. Not because the melody has faded, but because the memory feels more complicated than it once did. Number 9, Bump and Grind by R. Kelly. A few years before the gospel sweep of I Believe I Can Fly, another record was drifting out of car radios and late-night stations across the country. Slower, warmer, a little more private. Released in 1994, this song arrived during a moment when R&B was leaning heavily into intimate grooves and quiet storm radio. The sound was smooth, unhurried, and built for late evenings when the world outside had settled down.
Know just what you need, girl, so baby.
The feeling of the record was unmistakably close and personal. The singer's voice moved softly over the beat, almost like a conversation meant for one listener at a time. There was confidence in the delivery, relaxed, patient, and deeply aware of the mood it was creating. One small detail listeners often remember is how little the song seemed to rush. The production leaves space between the lines, allowing the voice to glide rather than push. That patience gave the record a kind of gravity. For many couples in the 1990s, songs like this became part of the quiet language of relationships. Music that filled living rooms after midnight or car rides home when the streets were nearly empty. But with the passing of time, the story behind the voice grew darker. Court cases, investigations, and ultimately prison sentences would reshape how many listeners heard these songs. And that creates an unusual kind of memory. The music itself hasn't changed, but the way people hear it often has. Sometimes the hardest part about revisiting an old record isn't the sound. It's knowing how much the story around it eventually changed. Number 8, You Are Not Alone by R. Kelly, songwriter.
You are not alone. Oh.
If the previous record lived in quiet intimacy, the next one reached outward, into loneliness, comfort, and reassurance. In 1995, a ballad appeared that quickly became one of the most recognizable slow songs of the decade. Performed by another legendary voice, the song carried a simple message. Even in the quietest moments of life, no one truly stands alone. The writer behind it had already become known as one of R&B's most influential song craftsmen. Throughout the 1990s, his pen helped shape the sound of the era, creating melodies that artists across pop, soul, and gospel wanted to record. The feeling of the song is gentle and protective. Soft piano chords open the space, and the lyrics speak directly to someone who may be hurting. There's one small detail in the writing that makes the record linger: the simplicity of the words. No complicated phrasing, just reassurance, delivered plainly.
One whispers in my ear and says that you.
For many listeners, this kind of song arrived during moments of quiet sadness, breakups, loss, or long nights when the world felt heavy. And yet the later chapters of the songwriter's life changed the way many people looked back at that era. The talent was undeniable. The records were real. But time has a way of reshaping the way we hold certain memories. Sometimes the music still comforts us, even when the story behind it no longer does. Number 7, Step in the Name of Love by R. Kelly.
Somebody's gonna make love night until the day.
Not every memory tied to a record is quiet or reflective. Some songs carry the sound of laughter, polished shoes on a dance floor, and a room full of people moving together. In the early 2000s, this record became one of those songs. It arrived during a period when R&B still held a strong connection to community. Family reunions, neighborhood gatherings, and wedding receptions where the music stayed on long after dinner plates were cleared. The feeling of the song was easygoing and joyful. A steady groove, warm horns, and a rhythm that almost invited people to slide across the floor together. It wasn't about vocal fireworks or dramatic storytelling. It was about rhythm, movement, and shared celebration. One small detail made the song unforgettable: the simple dance step that grew around it. Soon enough, crowds across the country were moving in the same rhythm, couples and friends gliding side to side as if they had practiced it for years. For a while, it felt like a song that belonged to everyone. Moments like that matter in music. A record that doesn't just play in the background, but actually brings people into the same moment together.
In the name of love.
But even joyful songs sometimes carry complicated shadows once time passes. When people hear this record today, many still remember the dance first, the laughter, the smooth steps, the feeling of a room moving as one. And sometimes that memory arrives before the rest of the story catches up. There was something about those late-night radio hours in R&B. The music didn't shout. It stayed close to you. Number 6, Down Low, Nobody Has to Know.
Trying to convince me
By R. Kelly featuring Ronald Isley. By the mid-1990s, storytelling had become a powerful part of R&B. Not just love songs, but full narratives, little dramas told through melody and rhythm. This record was one of the most talked about examples of that style. Released in 1995, the song paired a younger R&B star with one of soul music's most recognizable elder voices. Ronald Isley, already a legend through decades with the Isley Brothers, stepped into the track like a wise character in a late-night story.
Can't keep it on the down low.
The mood of the song was darker than most radio hits of the time. Quiet, secretive, and built around the tension of something that wasn't meant to be seen in daylight. And one detail listeners often remember is how Ronald Isley appears almost like a narrator inside the record, playing the role of Mr. Biggs, a character who would later appear in a whole series of R&B storytelling videos. For some fans, the song felt cinematic.
There is something that I don't wanna miss.
Almost like watching a short film unfold through music. And like many songs built around secrets, it carried a strange kind of tension beneath the smooth production. Looking back now, that tension feels different. Sometimes a song about hidden truths ends up echoing louder years later, when parts of the story finally come into the light. Number 5, Ignition, Remix by R. Kelly.
Gonna pop open a bottle of the hypnotic. No more time waste, let's get this party started.
By the early 2000s, R&B had begun to sound brighter, looser, and more playful. Clubs were louder, car stereos were stronger, and certain songs seemed built for warm nights when the windows were rolled down. This record was one of them. Released in 2002, the remix quickly became one of the most recognizable party records of its era. It wasn't dramatic or emotional in the traditional sense. Instead, it carried a relaxed confidence.
That's what I rate ya. Never mind them other girls, you know they're gonna hate ya. So squeeze me like a pipe.
The kind of groove that made people nod their heads before they even realized they were doing it. The feeling of the song was light and easy. The beat rolled forward like a slow cruise through city streets, and the vocals sounded almost conversational, casual, playful, and full of rhythm. One small detail made the track unforgettable: the way the singer almost spoke parts of the verse instead of fully singing them. That style gave the song a laid-back charm that fit perfectly with the beat underneath. For many listeners, this became one of those records that instantly changed the mood of a room. You might hear it at a backyard barbecue, a crowded club, or coming from the car beside you at a stoplight.
All up in your grill, trying to get you to a hotel. It must be a football cold.
It was music that lived in shared moments. But over the years, as the headlines surrounding the artist grew darker, the relationship many fans had with the record began to shift. Some still remember the carefree nights when it first played through the speakers. Others hear it now and feel a pause, like an old photograph that still holds a smile, even though the story behind it changed. If you're still listening, you're probably someone who remembers these songs the way they first felt. Subscribing helps keep these stories alive. Number 4, Trapped in the Closet, Chapter 1 by R. Kelly.
Sun wakes me, I'm stretching and yawning in a bed that don't belong to.
Every once in a while, a song arrives that feels less like a record and more like an unfolding story. In 2005, listeners began hearing the first chapter of something unusual on R&B stations. It was a long, spoken-style narrative delivered over a simple musical pattern, and it told the story of a man caught in an increasingly complicated situation.
House and Rufus says your house is my house too, and I say he's dead.
That opening chapter was only the beginning. The mood of the record was tense, almost theatrical. Instead of traditional verses and choruses, the singer delivered lines in a rhythmic, half-spoken style, as if narrating a late-night drama unfolding in real time. One memorable detail was how the same piano phrase repeated throughout the track, almost like the ticking of a clock while the story moved forward. For many listeners, the series became a cultural moment.
You got nerve, almost got you shot when you're sneaking in and out of hotel.
Friends would talk about the newest chapter the way people discussed television episodes, wondering what twist might come next. It was bold, strange, and completely different from most radio music of the time. But like so many parts of this artist's legacy, the creativity of the work eventually became overshadowed by events outside the music. And today, when people remember this unusual R&B experiment, they often remember it alongside a far more complicated story. Sometimes art can feel inventive and fascinating in one moment, and much harder to revisit years later. Number 3, I'm a Flirt, Remix by R. Kelly featuring T.I. and T-Pain.
Roll up on them doves, I'm a flirt. Sometimes when I'm with my chick on the low,
By the middle of the 2000s, R&B was blending more freely with hip-hop than ever before. The lines between the genres had softened and collaborations were everywhere. Voices from different corners of the music world sharing the same track. This record was one of those moments. Released in 2007, the remix paired smooth R&B vocals with two artists who were shaping the sound of hip-hop at the time. The result felt modern for its era, confident and playful without trying too hard to prove itself.
When I walk by, you turn your head, she wink her eye. I can't help it if she checking for.
The mood of the song was built around swagger, not aggression, not heartbreak, just a relaxed confidence that fit neatly into the sound of radio during those years. One small detail listeners often remember is how the hook lands so simply. The words repeat easily, almost like a chant that crowds could join without thinking about it. Songs like this often lived in everyday spaces, car stereos, weekend gatherings, or friends sharing music through burned CDs and early digital playlists.
Oh, chick, just keeping it real, my nigga. It's a player's field, my nigga. Don't take no chick to.
It was part of a period when R&B felt social again. Records weren't just something you listened to alone. They moved through groups of people. But as time moved forward, the public story around the artist continued to grow heavier. And that changes the way some listeners hear these songs now. Sometimes music captures a moment of carefree energy, even when the years that follow bring a very different tone. Number 2, When a Woman's Fed Up by R. Kelly.
Things I took her through, shit, I shouldn't have lasted this long.
Not every R&B song leans on romance. Some lean on truth. Released in 1998, this record spoke directly to a feeling many people understood, the moment when patience finally runs out. The lyrics describe a relationship that has been stretched too far, where apologies come too late and promises no longer hold the same weight. The emotional temperature of the song is steady and reflective.
You can cry a river till the ocean stops.
The singer doesn't sound angry so much as resigned, as if the story has already reached its conclusion. One detail that stands out is the restrained delivery. The voice doesn't push for drama. Instead, it stays calm, almost weary, letting the words carry the meaning. For listeners, this kind of record often arrived during difficult chapters of life. Breakups, betrayals, or long relationships.
She was raised in Illinois.
That quietly ended after too many chances were given. Music like this has a way of sitting beside people during those moments. But in hindsight, the song carries an unusual kind of irony, a record about consequences, sung by someone who would eventually face consequences of his own. And that makes the final entry on this list feel even heavier. Number 1, The Storm Is Over Now by R. Kelly.
The storm is over. Storm is over now.
Sometimes a song feels less like entertainment and more like a prayer. Released in 2000 as part of a gospel-influenced project, this record carried a message of endurance. The lyrics speak about surviving hardship, wading through darkness, and believing that peace eventually arrives after the struggle. The arrangement reflects that feeling. Choir harmonies rise behind the lead vocal, and the music builds slowly, almost like a congregation lifting its voice together. One detail that many listeners remember is how the singer holds the final notes with a kind of emotional strain, as if the words themselves require effort to release.
And felt all alone.
For people who heard the record during difficult times, it offered comfort. Illness, loss, financial hardship. Songs like this often became quiet companions through those chapters. But time has a way of reshaping how certain records are heard. When listeners revisit this one now, the message can feel complicated. A song about redemption, written by someone whose later life would be defined by scandal and prison. And yet, the music itself still carries that old promise, that storms eventually do pass. Sometimes the most powerful songs remain meaningful, even when the life behind them takes a very different path. Music has always been a strange keeper of memory. A song can take us back decades in a few seconds, to a living room, a car ride, a slow dance, or a moment when life felt simpler than it does today.
It's over. It's over now.
The records we heard back then didn't just entertain us, they stayed with us. But sometimes the stories behind the voices grow complicated with time. For many listeners, the music still holds the same melody it always did. The same chords, the same rhythm, the same feeling drifting out of the speakers late at night. What changes is the way we hold those memories. Thank you for sitting with these stories tonight, and for remembering the music in your own way. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through the history of R&B, you're always welcome to subscribe and return for the next one. And on the screen in front of you, there's another video waiting, another set of songs, another era, and another doorway back into the music that shaped our lives. The Dark Side of Stax Records, what you never heard. Until then, keep listening.